Philip, it's lovely to see you. You're looking very well indeed. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you. Long day and it's Friday, so,
Wonderful. And listen, it's always great to speak to somebody who's on the international circuit. People like to know how you manage your business. And we've spoken to you before, so I want to have a bit of an update. But before we start, let's talk about what your speaking business consists of. Do you have a full-time job and you speak on the side? Do you speak full-time? What is sort of like a week in the life of Philip, perhaps you could share?
it is eclectic. There are kind of three pillars. So one is executive education and leadership transformation, which is something that I essentially dove into because of the, evolution from speaking about trust and being one of the, on-call speakers for that to speaking about the so what of trust, which is the human side of transformation or human transformation, as I call it, a human future, as I call it. Which brings us also to the second part, which is futurism, but particularly the humankind, as in, yeah, that is a pun, I guess, but it's also about really understanding how technology is only ever an enabler of the future, and it's the humans driving that and the human touch driving that. And the third part really is thought leadership. So working on an advisory basis, retained or project basis with large organizations across tech and also just big corporates on telling their story. And as you notice, there is a sort of an end-to-end quality to that. The first part is really about introspection, understanding how we can upskill ourselves to become our best leaders and as a result build the best kind of teams and organizations. The future aspect is about really kind of going far out and thinking about how does our behavior, and I mean behavior, how do we influence the future? How does our behavior drive future, right? And then the final thing is really that aspect of storytelling and thought leadership. How does a client then turn this spark of inspiration and this leadership transformation work into a narrative that can actually sustain them and tide them through hard times and good, and also build the future of the organization? Now, I'm a firm believer, having learned this by doing and by experience, that you want to have a very integrated, at the same time, diversified business. So you really want to be able to spread your expertise across different ways, different formats, right? Different modes, and to find connections between the different ways this applies to your clients. So I started out as a very much gig-based speaker. Did this kind of next to a consulting gig. Now what's happened is over the past 2 years, my business has really become interwoven, where thought leadership drives project outcomes, where project business leads to keynote sales, where everything is perfectly integrated, and where a thought leadership client might also become a leadership transformation client, or where a leadership transformation program may actually lead to a keynote inquiry. So everything is really nicely integrated. And I believe that, if I'd started out that way, I would have started out much more steeper in my learning curve.
I like that. I like that. It was interesting when I normally say to somebody, break down your business, they'll say, oh, well, I have online courses, I have keynotes, I have workshops, I have this, I have that. But you've actually put it into three really strong sections here, executive education. So that can be, I imagine, group work or one-to-one,
Yeah,
and can take
exactly.
long-term format or short-term format. Futurism could be a keynote, it could be a fireside chat, it could be anything, and it could be actually doing
Yeah,
the work and the research as well. And
exactly.
then the thought leadership, it's interesting you define it as storytelling. Tell me a bit more about that. Why do you call thought leadership storytelling?
Well, I believe that fundamentally it's about amplifying the greatness of an organization and plugging it into whatever's hot in the industry, right? So it is an outward look, and I said this morning on a podcast, as it matters. I said, if you want to transform your organization, there is a people lens, and then there is an overall brand, organization, thought leadership lens. People transformation is always a journey within. It's a journey for each individual to their inner resources, their inner qualities, their inner strengths, and from there on, they can actually build their greatest leadership potential. But organizational and kind of brand and thought leadership transformation is actually a journey without, and that has two connotations. One connotation is looking over the fence, getting inspired, and understanding which story and which character you are embodying. So it is about storytelling because you are leading with what you have instead of what you have not. But you are also transforming without, which means transforming without all that other stuff you say, without all that other stuff you try and put out there, simply by distilling the essence of your story and the simple reason why people should listen. And I think that's basically, to quote a fable, and it's an ancient Indian fable. A sculptor makes these beautiful marble elephants that feel almost like they're going to jump out at you. They're alive. And he takes this giant marble slab from the quarry and he gets asked, how do you make these beautiful, vivid elephants just from a giant marble slab? And he says, it's very simple. I take a chisel and a hammer and I just remove all which isn't elephant.
I love that. I take the chisel and the hammer and remove all that isn't elephant. That is really good. I like
That's thought
that.
leadership. That is what thought leadership is about.
I like that. Um, you also, we had a little chat before we came on to record. You said you are now format agnostic, which is a great
Yes.
way of describing yourself. Tell me what that means. Share with us what that means.
Yeah. It means that, I increasingly recognize that when you build your expertise as a platform, it becomes more about you bringing expertise than it becomes you about bringing a keynote or a fireside or a moderation or a facilitation or a masterclass. So I say to my clients, keynote is like the flagship. Yeah, if you want that, everybody knows what that entails, and it's usually headline keynotes. It's the stuff I love doing and thrive in. But also, I believe that there are so many different formats in which we could add value. So treat the speaker as a human and understand that whatever format you want to plug them into, you can use a speaker in different ways. All that it requires from us as speakers, as professionals, is to be open to that, which means I'll have a client say, hey, can you do a keynote plus a moderation? Can you do a fireside chat plus a facilitation? Can you be a program director to a leadership transformation? And at the same time, give a little mini keynote at the end, right? So the combinations can be infinite. And I work with a baseline fee. So no matter what the client wishes, whether it's just a call or can you join this for 20 minutes? It's basically there's a fixed fee baseline. And if it's a keynote, it's more than the baseline fee. But if somebody really just wants firesides, it encourages them to think about maybe beyond just one to do a second one or a third one. So the idea is you have a sort of a baseline engagement, which allows that you actually dedicate your time to make bespoke content for the client, or at the very least understand what the client's business is, right? And at the same time, it also acts as a filter on the client end, where it sort of really filters for sincerity, and it helps you maintain a premium positioning if that's your thing.
And actually, by saying those words, the premium positioning and a baseline fee, it leads me on very nicely to my next question for you. And of course, you've talked about executive education, futurism, thought leadership, all of the language that you use, the way that you speak, people will know that you are charging a higher fee than average. It's not a low fee. What does it take, though, to maintain those high fees? And you maintain them through COVID as well, I know. So what does it take when there are challenges in the economy? Certainly in the UK, we're facing cost of living challenges, which does reflect on what's going on in conferences and events. How do you maintain those fees? Is it that you insist that this is the baseline and you will walk away? Or do you have a different way of doing it?
It takes guts. And I'll be very honest, Maria, I did implement fee maintenance during the pandemic, but I did it only after a few months because I lacked those very guts early on. And that was a major F up because it leads you down a rabbit hole. So that also had to do with the fact that I was quite prolific in Australia, and Australia is notorious for having very, very low fees. To quote let's say a global management company that has had some conversations, which, I didn't end up going, it doesn't matter. I said, if you're an international speaker, you're still going to charge 9,000 Australian in Australia. That's basically what you get. And I'd come from a different place, but I was lured into thinking of the pandemic initially as a way of, just maybe you should make concessions. And I stopped doing that about 6 months in, and then went the exact other way. And the rationale I brought is very simple. Most of our buyers have boxes to tick on top of, the interest that they have in us as people. They have boxes to tick. And I would get a frequent email, which is like, oh, we have this virtual keynote and the budget is 5,000 euros. This seems to be the new international benchmark budget for any speaker virtually. It's one of those weird things where all of a sudden people agree that that's somehow the baseline. That's the benchmark. And I was like, well, hold on a minute. If that's what you want, I'm happy to recommend speakers who are available. And I can recommend them because I've either worked with them or I know their work. However, if you're open to extending the scope, then we can work with my baseline, which is double that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's more per gig. It just means that the size of the account of the business is 10K up. And it's fair because it encourages the client to think, oh, well, I have another event, or maybe I'm just going to slot this person in for a second recording or a second keynote or a second fireside. So if you want to do keynotes for a reasonable fee, that's fine. But what reasonable is, I think, is very much up to you to define, not the client. And this is very important. So for me, reasonable is a 10K baseline fee. I'm very transparent about that. And it's reasonable for me to do a couple firesides for that. But if somebody wants a headline keynote, that's going to be a different fee, higher fee. However, for me, it doesn't make any difference whether I do that keynote once or twice. So for instance, when the client says, can you do this with one group? And then maybe right after, can you do this with another group? The answer is yes, of course. Because for me, the main work is the bespoke prep, understanding the client, reading the audience, and of course, bringing expertise and skill into the mix. How often I do that on a day when I'm spending time with the client anyway, that's, to me, it's irrelevant. And to me, that's what it means to be premium. You do whatever it takes, but you have standards and you maintain those standards and you understand that this is a values-based interaction more than it is a price-based interaction. And when you lead that, guide that with clients, very quickly you realize there is commonality because the client has a budget because that's what they've been given. And I've had an interaction where I did exactly this with a big client and they said, you know what, no problem. What we'll do is we'll do a second session, a second fireside with you, where you're going to sum up the second day of the conference for us because you're that kind of connecting the dots guy.
Yeah.
Perfect. Works for me.
Very good. I like it.
Works so for them, most importantly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's that whole point about value. It's not about price, it's about value. That's so important. It's a completely different discussion. A lot's changed for you. I mean, we caught up last time on our podcast, actually back in December, and a lot's changed for you. And what's changed, and people will have seen, because I think we also had a podcast back in 2019. They'll see a huge transformation in you. Yeah, I keep bringing you back. Huge transformation in you as an individual. And when we last spoke, you said to me that part of that is down to meditation.
Yes.
Talk to me about that, because I've resisted meditation. Talk to me how it's helped you and how you use it and how it helps you with your speaking business.
Okay. I think mindfulness is the outcome of meditation, which does help with business. But meditation is about, in fact, it's a complete introspection. It is an utter self-confrontation. And it has led me down a path of reading ancient scriptures of various religions and faiths. And the idea is all faiths flow into, they're all rivers, right? And all these rivers of faiths and denominations flow into the same ocean of God. And when we really truly introspect, we find the divine within. So this has been referred to as the perennial philosophy, and it led me down a path of spiritual, personal, interaction with the world. At the same time, it can be spiritual, but it doesn't have to be, right? There is clearly a benefit of mindfulness in your commercial reality, in the way that you impact people and the way that you create value in the world. And also in the way that you think of your business. I fundamentally believe that when my ambition is to help the world around me in whatever way I can and truly make that my objective, then I can feel good about the sort of financial part of that. I can feel okay with the fact that I'm charging perhaps a premium price point because I can feel so committed to the value that I bring. And it comes from the heart. It means whether it's a go or a no-go, whether the client is friendly to me or it's difficult, either way, I pour all of my heart into it. And that comes from a spiritual realization, which is one that I keep renewing in meditation. So for me, that's my source of, it's the well of wisdom and energy that comes from within. Um, I recently read the Bodhisattva, which is ultimately one of the key Buddhist scriptures, right? And one of the lines stuck with me. You may or may not connect with this, but it's really powerful. It says, there are two different ways of living a spiritual life, which in the Buddhist sense is a life towards awakening, right? One is the spirit of aspiring towards awakening, and one is the spirit of pursuing awakening. And those two are different. So some of us, we aspire to, be spiritual beings, or we aspire to do a good job. We aspire to be purposeful. We aspire to be nice. We aspire to be pleasant. We aspire to be sociable, and so on and so forth. We aspire for all these things. But it's genuinely the pursuit of awakening, or the pursuit of insert anything you like, that makes all the difference. And so the line that comes after that is ironic and paradox, but it's really, really interesting. It says, for those of us who choose to pursue the path of awakening, an unlimited and uninterrupted stream of merit will come upon their lives, even when they are distracted or asleep. The meaning here is really simple. When you concentrate on bringing good upon others, you can stop thinking about yourself, the self, the material, the egotistical, the monetary, the financially driven self, the ambitious self. Because when you focus your life on improving the condition of the people around you, you pour your heart into that, and you aspire steadfastly towards realizing the ultimate goal of life, your ultimate purpose, then life takes care of you, simply because of the way you approach life, the way you approach the world around you. And couldn't this be like the biggest relief ever? Like that ability to simply concentrate on what's good and great, and trust that that is naturally going to lead things to work themselves out. It takes a lot of discipline, mind you. It takes discipline to resist the temptation to go all out and try to force everything, and simply to sit back and relax and let things flow and let things happen, and to give all your attention to bettering the state of the world around you.
Wow, that's really powerful. I didn't know we were going to go down this route today. That's really
I also
powerful.
didn't know that.
No,
I
that's
also
really
didn't know that, Maria.
Yeah, but I do like what you're saying, that if you stop and just focus on the doing good, the good and the great, that it just makes life a lot simpler, doesn't it, actually, in a way. And I've seen the transformation in you. The transformation is incredible, and I've seen you go from strength to strength. There's something in this. Philip. So here's a question coming back to the world of speaking, which is obviously is not nearly as big a topic as we've just covered. That was very deep. Thank you. What do you see in your experience from your international travel and international work and working with some really big clients?
Yeah.
What are you seeing the future for speaking?
Short noticism. There's a lot of short notice stuff. Flexible, it changes all the time. Now, just to build a bridge between this question and the one previously.
That would be great. Yes, that's
doing
very
that
professional.
Is extremely hard. And it's a challenge every day. If I were to think about, have I done this? I'd say I've tried. But we are so conditioned by success, by ambition, by, this idea of being proud of being great at what we do, that this freedom of attainment, whilst it is 100% verifiable in my own life experience, the more I focus and concentrate on others, the more I focus on pouring my heart into doing a great job, the more things work out for me. Absolutely verifiable. But keeping your mind on that, extremely hard. And so when it comes to the business of speaking, I think we are in the midst of a huge drive towards authenticity, originality, genuine differentiation. And this means as speakers that we become more than just, the pleasance of the event or the presence of the event, but we become genuinely extraordinary in having deep content and enabling deep engagement. And doing this no matter what format, and doing it in whatever way it takes. Simple example, it doesn't matter whether it's hybrid or virtual or online. It doesn't matter whether it's a fireside or, it genuinely doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. it's a different game for all formats, but it truly requires that level of agility and flexibility for us to demonstrate that we are the consummate professionals that we, are ultimately hired to be, and to demonstrate that through action instead of words, which is ironic as a speaker. We are kind of in the business of words, but you get my drift.
I get your drift. And I like that. And it's really interesting because fundamentally everybody needs to be authentic or original. They need to differentiate, and, having deep content and deep engagement, it's absolutely what clients want. So that it's just putting it in a very simple way. And as you say, it doesn't matter what the format is.
Yeah.
You still need to deliver those outcomes. Okay. And I totally agree with you in terms of what I'm seeing too, is this sort of like short-termism, this not everybody, not every event, because it's not possible. But I think we got to the point, because the virtual is short-term, that even in the physical world, people want to do things short-term. And the fact that there aren't enough planes because they're cancelled and people can't actually physically get, it doesn't matter. We're still going to find a solution. We want to do it short-term. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is good. It encourages our industry to modernize, and encourages us to truly be, the role of the public thinker, the public intellectual has been somewhat derailed in modern times, and yet filling that role out is huge. There's a big shoes to fill. It's a huge undertaking. It's a huge job. So let's fill that with actual purposeful depth. Let's really make it work. And let's be daring enough to be original instead of being an innovation speaker, right? Or having your topic. Let's tell our own story in more creative ways. I think, if anything, that was as much a wish for the future of speaking as it is an observation of what's happening, that there are more formats now, also more types of speakers, more ways in which we can be successful. So I think it's about maintaining that open mind and really, approaching clients that way too. Making it human, humanizing it. Well, that's kind of my topic, so I don't want to.
It keeps coming back to the human. Yeah. Brilliant. So my last question for you, and I don't know if you have an answer. I don't know. I hope you do. What's next for you, Philipp, the speaker, Philipp, the expert, Philipp, the person, the human?
I think it's about merging all of this and understanding what is the sort of big question mark in the middle. A lot of these things are converging in my world, moving from the trust economy towards, understanding futurism, towards understanding human transformation. All of those are interweaving, and there's a confluence. At the same time, to me, I'm very open and fluid in the way I work. So I'm also really curious, what's the next big thing? And how these themes, which are now really, really consolidated and concentrated, and which are sort of finally have met for me, where they feel like truly what I want to do and what I am doing right now is truly the direction I'm taking. Where is that going to lead me? I have no idea, but I trust that it's going to be one heck of a journey. So to me, that's the big picture. Because when you are doing so many formats, and when you are so flexible, right, there is a red thread, but how does that red thread get interwoven into a new, Christmas pullover or whatever it is? That's the really big question.
Fantastic. We might have to catch up again soon to find out where you've ended up and what you're doing. Philipp, it's been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Absolutely. And tremendous thanks as usual, Maria. It's invigorating as always. Greetings everyone from Singapore. It's gotten dark, as you can probably tell. And a happy Friday night, but probably it's going to get aired another time. So
I'll be on a different day. Weekend. But you'll be having a great weekend. Thank you. And thank you,
everybody.
Happy
next Friday. Happy weekend. There you go.
There you go. So thank you everybody for listening to the Speaking Business podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave us a rating, tell your friends and share it. And I will be back with you next time. Thank you.